you can still have electrolytes without that coloring. And that's, I think, the main thing is that it's not that there's no room for treats. It's that there's no room for chemicals that could potentially cause us to be very, very sick when we can make that food and it can taste just as good without it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. I'm Kelsey.
Hi, guys. I'm Rachel. Welcome back for another week with Kelsey, Rachel, and Lucy.
And Lucy. Hello, Lucy.
Hey, sweetie.
She's thriving.
So shiny. Did you do the leaf shine?
No, but I gave her a little spritz this morning, and I feel like she's really drinking that in and glowing. Yeah. But you know how you did say, like, if you don't move it closer to the window, they'll just start, like, going that way?
Yep.
She just started, like, going towards the window.
Yeah, just give her a little turn.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
just straighten her out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you just quarter turn, and that'll keep the reaching like even so she doesn't topple herself over.
Yeah. Doesn't get top heavy. Yeah, she's thriving.
You know about that being top heavy.
yeah. Top overall.
So top. You guys, all right. Well, listen, we had to cover this because there's a big list of foods that came out this week that are on the chopping block in several states for they contain substances in which are now being considered dangerous for human consumption by many agencies. And there are many states that are taking steps to try and ban some of these ingredients, which would leave our hot Cheetos, our Oreos, and potentially our Gatorade on the chopping block in several states, needing to either change their formula or stop selling there altogether. And when this list came out, it was not necessarily surprising. I mean, nobody is, eating their hot Cheetos and thinking they're making a tremendously health conscious decision. However, the reason that we wanted to cover this was the presence of Gatorade on the list.
Yeah, so I think that when this came out, and people are going to feel they're going to have their different feels about this, and we're going to try and keep it very factual for you today. But when it comes to things like Gatorade, I think these are specifically surprising for a lot of people because the marketing has been so targeted towards a health conscious community. So when we learn, some of us are learning right now. I mean, I haven't drinking Gatorade in very many years. But when we learn that some of these things that have been targeted towards children or people who are active or trying to live an active lifestyle, that they potentially or do have ingredients that are actively causing harm to our bodies, I think it's just worth a discussion. Isn't it?
Worth it.
Because I think that like the type of marketing, like you can market any subset. And Gatorade has been specifically successful in targeting athletes and people who are active and are looking to have some electrolytes or give their kids some electrolytes during any type of competition or while they're playing a sport or doing an athletic activity. But that's just marketing. There's not any like proof behind that. And sometimes when we're having our own individual reactions to things like this, we can confuse facts with marketing. And as you're listening to some of the things that we're going to say in this episode, I would really just implore you to kind of think about what is an actual fact and what has been targeted towards marketing.
I am thinking back to, when this campaign for me hit its height, obviously, was Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
So, we grew up in an era where there were some tremendously dominant athletes in their fields.
Goats,
And
greatest of all time.
absolutely, like growing up, we undoubtedly saw some of the best that will ever play a specific sport. And I think that opportunity, Pepsi took the opportunity to, use some of these figures to make us as consumers believe that, some of their athletic performance was based around a drink. And, they drink it and they're the best in the world. So, obviously, if I drink it, I'm not going to be the best in the world, but it'll enhance my performance. And that's how Gatorade has been marketed over the years, as a performance enhancer. It's like you could be sadly hydrated with just your water and playing like a piece of shit in your pickleball tournament, or you could be downing some delicious yellow number 5 and be crushing your
Destroying your
pickleball
kidney
tournament.
function.
You could be crushing it because of all the extra electrolytes,
Energy.
and
You just feel it.
energy, right? And it's just going to flow through your veins, and you're just going to perform. And I'm not saying anything about electrolytes, sugar, salt, water. These things, like scientifically, these things have been shown to combine and enhance athletic performance and enhance hydration. Okay, that's totally fine. There's no studies showing that Red 40 does that for you at all. So it's not so much about the idea of electrolytes. It's about things, food additives that are not necessarily there for what we're seeking the product for. They're there instead for awesome coloring, super great marketing, awesome taste. Those are the things that I think that we can still have an open mind about, because we're not going to certainly argue about electrolytes and whether or not they're good for your body. Like that's not the case. But we are
No, but
going.
you could also make you could also make a shit smoothie and put some spinach in it. Like, I'll say like, well, it does have some fiber in it. Yeah, that's in it as well. But do you want to eat shit? like,
just, just blended up this dog shit right here, put some spinach in it, and I'm calling it healthy. Yeah, no, I think that, like I said, the rest of the list, not really surprising, but I did want to hit on the Gatorade just because I think that it is unfair how it has been marketed. And I think a lot of people are left not knowing that there are potentially harmful ingredients in something that they thought was enhancing they or their child's even performance. And so I just,
and we all we talked about this in a previous episode, but like ideas that we developed as a child are what most adults lead for decision making in the future. And a lot of us grew up on Gatorade.
yeah,
Like that's one of those that like we grew up on Gatorade, and if you were an athlete or did anything active in your younger years, I can probably guarantee you have some memory of getting your favorite colored Gatorade during a game or a hot day, like I know playing tennis or playing soccer. Like I definitely drank Gatorade. So like as we grow up and be adults and maybe move on to have children or coach sports or whatever, we're doing the same thing maybe for ourselves or our kids. Like we just kind of like go with the same thing that we have done in the past. And I don't want to seem extreme with what I'm saying here, but smoking has historically had a similar effect for a different generation. They grew up with the idea that smoking was completely safe, and it was the cool thing to do. They were very nostalgic memories where people had developed a smoking habit, and then all of a sudden we're under the impression that like lighting the ingredients in cigarettes probably weren't good for us to be like ingesting. But
it
a
looked
lot
cool
of
though.
it
Looked
looked cool at the
real
time,
cool.
and we had to take new information that we could carry into the future and realize that that wasn't a health conscious decision. So I know a lot of people are going to feel attacked with some of these foods, but if you could just step back from it a little bit and maybe think about how we can use new information in a way that we don't have to move so far into the other side of being, having health anxiety and having so much anxiety about, like, well, what can I eat? There's a balance here that we have to strike between, things that are actively harming us and moderation.
I think that that is going to be my personal main goal of this episode, is to bring awareness to a topic that is very hot in the news right now and that is going on, that involves the food and drinks that we may take in on a daily basis, and also make sure that our mental health
Yeah.
is able to stay intact, with the fact that, like, sometimes when you start going down this road, everything is toxic, and you start getting this hopeless feeling that there is nothing to eat or drink, there's nowhere you can go, there's nothing you can put in your hair, there's no clothes you can wear. It's a road that can go some weird ass places. So I want to make sure that we ride that line between awareness and anxiety, because it sometimes can be a very thin line and a tightrope walk, but staying on one side rather than getting into the anxiety part of, just feeling as if there's nothing in 2024 that you can be around or consume or wear, or like,
Yeah.
that's not helping you in any way. That's not making you healthier. It's not. So, I want to just talk a little bit about the background of where some of this is coming from, because what we have is new food additives and chemicals that are being targeted by several states. New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, New Jersey, and Missouri are all looking at this list, and they're all moving forward. They're at various stages of the legislation, but they're all moving forward towards a ban of these ingredients. And as we said, that would affect things like Gatorade, Oreos, Lucky Charms, Doritos. There's a lot of foods on the list using these potentially banned ingredients, and it's a lot of states now. But this actually started, well, California is kind of the leader in this movement, where I don't know if people remember, a couple years ago there was the Skittles ban, right? Quote unquote, because Skittles wasn't actually banned, but people take a name and they run with it. Do you remember hearing about this, or?
I do, and it's interesting because um it's interesting because how information is translated is very strategic. And I think anyone who's on, like, social media or has been in any kind of, like, different social groups knows that um this can be very strategic and can definitely change how you think about something. Now, when the Skittles ban came out, a lot of people were very um they thought they couldn't get Skittles anywhere ever again. And and a lot of people very much believed that, and will definitely believe any inflammatory things that will come out about Gatorade. And I think one of the things that is really important to keep in mind is a lot of these companies are really big names. Rachel just named Oreo, Gatorade, Pepsi. These are really big names that are billion-dollar industries. They can put out a lot of information. So I think it's really important, as you're kind of taking in some of these informations and thinking about some of the legislation passed around the commonly used food chemicals, that we don't just simplify it to Skittles and Gatorade being banned. It's specific chemicals that have been proven to be harmful to you that need to be taken out of the ingredients for some of these companies.
And that don't actually need to be in there.
They don't. They don't.
In order for, because what we've seen and what was repeated during, California looking at these 4 food additives, and one of them, red dye 3, was present in Skittles. That's why it's got this name, the Skittles ban, because one of the ingredients was also found in Skittles. And what was a constant reminder from anyone involved in this legislation is that Skittles actually removes that ingredient when it sells in a worldwide market,
Yes.
because several countries have already banned red dye number 3.
So
It's
you
not
can-
allowed in food.
Exactly. Like you can still get Skittles in some of these other countries. They just without the harmful chemical that we're still consuming here in the United States.
So it's not so much that it's right. It's not so much that we're banning Skittles, right? It's more that we're asking Skittles to like change their formula, in which that work's already been done because they've already done it for other markets. So essentially, what we're looking at is just asking for those same products in the United States. I mean, there's no ban happening.
Well, let's talk about red dye number 3 for a second, because it's a lot of people have never heard of this. Like probably have never heard of red dye number 3 or even know where it's banned in other countries. And it's a commonly used color additive found in a lot of candies and other food products. But it was banned from cosmetic use more than 30 years ago by the FDA due to concerns of it being a carcinogen.
So wait, let's just stop on that for a second. That's our FDA.
That's our FDA.
The FDA has already said you can't put red dye number 3 on your skin because it absorbs, and we know that it's a carcinogen.
But
well, we can still eat it, though.
It's still used in popular candies. I think that it's used in Peeps will probably not surprise anyone, because I mean, nobody eats Peeps and they're like, I wonder how this is going to digest in my body. But it's used in other foods, like cookies and colored drinks. But it's banned from food use in Japan, China, UK, Australia, and New Zealand.
Also the European Union.
Also the European Union.
So all of Europe.
I'm sorry. I don't even mean to laugh at that. Like sometimes when we just stop and think about one thing is that the only thing for me, like, you just can't help but laugh because it just seems so ridiculous that it seems so ridiculous for me personally that how we translate that information here in the United States is like, well, we know they can't let us eat Skittles. It's like, whoa, that's actually not the case. We don't want consumption of a proven carcinogen. You can still have Skittles, but this company needs to remove that harmful ingredient that they've already done for all of these other countries and just do it here in the United States.
It kind of reminds me of like if like they started finding trace amounts of like rat poison in some of these things. It's like, well, like, hey, Skittles, you got to take that rat poison out or we're not going to continue to sell your products. Like, oh, they're taking our Skittles. Like, no, you don't. Trust me, you don't want. You don't want
the rat poison.
No, you don't want it. So like, So here's the thing with California starting this legislation. It wasn't just red dye number 3. It was, oh my God, I'm going to butcher these.
I know.
Brominated vegetable oil, BVO is what it's commonly known as. Potassium bromate and propylparaben. Those 4 food additives. The state of California passed legislation successfully to say that by 2027, if you have any one of those 4 still in any food that you're selling, you're not going to be able to sell in our state. So they gave a really large runway here, a really large runway. Because until then, we're all going to continue to consume red dye number 3. until 2027 when it says like, okay, you have to change your formula. So the runway is really large for these companies to be able to take out some of these things. And obviously we know the ease of this because many other countries have already forced them to do this. So they have the formulas, right? They know how to take out the rat poison. It's just going about and doing it. Potassium bromate is like usually used to strengthen dough. So you'd be looking for this in breads, cookies, tortillas. That's also been banned in the European Union, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Brazil. That's already banned there. So there's a large market where these companies already sell that they can change their formulas to not include this. It's weird. It gets weird when you're like, how come those people are demanding not to be exposed to this, but like these people they're just like a short plane ride away. It just gets weird. And so with this, New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, they've all advanced their legislation to outlaw an additional 13. So not only would those four that California has already said no to, would those be on this? But there's an additional 13 that are going to be on the chopping block in those 3 states that legislation is pushing forward now. And then New Jersey and Missouri have also come forward and saying they're considering these 13 for bans as well. And just a couple of them, they're all food additives. Most of them are dyes. That's why Gatorade, right? Because you know that's not the natural color that any drink should be. You've never seen a drink in nature be electric blue. What's that weird green one? Like booger green. So yellow 6, yellow 5, titanium dioxide, blue 1, red 40. This is probably the one that people are most familiar with. I know I am as a mother of a son with ADHD. Any food dyes, and those are a few of the 13 that we're looking at banning for various reasons. Many are linked as carcinogens: lung cancer, kidney tumors. The food dyes that we're going to talk about in Gatorade and Pedialyte actually has some of them as well. Those are linked not only to cancer, but also hyperactivity. Now, we know of red 40, well, some people are getting hip to this, that it is commonly advised by doctors if you bring a child that presents with any ADHD type symptoms, and I'm using symptoms in quotes here because I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
Um,
Any neurodivergent behavior.
One of the very first things most MDs will suggest, or pediatricians, is looking at the red 40 consumption that you have in your child's diet. Things like cupcakes, Pillsbury, all that brand has a lot. Skittles, Sour Patch Kids, M&Ms, Gatorade. These things are commonly made with red 40, and it's been linked to hyperactivity in so many case studies that it's almost absurd now. So, I know that some moms are hip to this, but the fact is not only are carcinogens on the list, but also things that are sort of behavior changing, associated. Right. So, when we looked at some of these things and how the dyes impact your brain, some of the findings were that the dopamine in your brain is affected, and the neurotransmitters and hormones that are responsible for feelings of pleasure and reward, that is one of the most affected areas when we look at red 40 and really all the food dyes. They can potentially affect the chemistry and hormone makeup of your brain, where the reward center is not functioning at its top peak level. We're interrupting this podcast to tell you about the coolest leggings that have ever been on the planet ever. And if you are going to try to crush this new year, you need them. Why are you laughing?
You sounded like that kid. Have you ever had a dream where have you ever tried the best leggings and then they are sweat proof?
No, it's so true. Sweat proof, squat proof. They are so freaking comfortable and they have pockets. If you're listening to this podcast and you're not currently wearing our leggings, I gotta tell you, you are missing the boat, sis.
You're missing the boat. And the thing is, most people don't know as they start to get new leggings that not all leggings are created equal.
Oof.
And you don't know that your leggings are see-through until you've been wearing them for a month at the gym and someone gets up the courage to tell you that they've been seeing through. Our leggings never see through, completely squat proof, sweat proof, and they stay up while you're working out. So grab a pair for this new year at constantlyvariedgear.com. Something that I wanted to mention for anyone listening to that, the whole idea specifically around Red 40, is that just because this has been associated with some behaviors, like associated with neurodivergent behaviors or ADHD behaviors, doesn't mean that anyone else consuming those type of ingredients are just like not being affected. Because if we're inserting something like a spike in dopamine or a change in behavior or hyperactivity, there's a certain baseline for any one person where they're starting. And then if we add gasoline on that fire, we're seeing an increase in a lot of that behavior. So when it comes to, certain people who are going to kind of display some of these increase in behaviors because of the things they're consuming, that doesn't mean anyone else who's consuming those same additives are not being almost affected by those dyes in how they're presenting. They are, maybe not to the same extreme, but 100% still being affected. And it's very interesting that doctors are going to interesting they know what they're kind of looking for, and they know what's been proven and out there. But we have always been working with the baseline that anything that we are consuming is going to affect our behavior. It's going to affect our mental health. It's going to affect our physical health, because these are things that we're consuming on a daily basis. That's right out there. We know that. So when it comes to things that are literally only harmful, that's only being added into these foods that are only causing harm, there's no world where red dye number 40 is like, well, it has some protein. Like no,
Well, what about the protein,
like,
though? Have you
it's got a little
considered?
touch of fiber. Like, this is where I really want to differentiate health anxiety and food anxiety from some of these dyes and additives, because it's not something that like ice cream is bad for you, right? Like that's not the case. We can look at ice cream and say like, okay, well, it has milk, it has dairy, it has all of these other ingredients that actually are beneficial for you in some way. These dyes are not. They have nothing in there. So this is a really big difference from saying like, we can't have chips, we can't have ice cream. Like, that's not what this podcast is. That's not what this podcast is about. We're not telling you that any of these kind of like sweet treat foods or other foods that you might get a similar dopamine, I'm using air bunnies there, dopamine hit from, that are just like part of like chocolate, things like that are just like, well, I'm living this life and I want to be able to consume these things. Yes, 100%. And all of those have a place in your diet. Dyes and food additives don't.
I mean, when we're categorizing, food as being good or bad,
Mm-hmm.
really I feel the only place for us to say that a food lands in bad territory is if it has a known carcinogen in it.
Like we
I,
would rat poison is a great like example of that though. Like we're not it's not on the same lines as as just, a balanced diet that
no, it's
doesn't
not
have.
saying I'm eating a cookie and I'm being bad.
Yeah.
No, 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 ma'am. But I'm consuming a food dye that's been known to have links to cancer. Um, because you can have a cookie without the dyes. You can have electrolytes
Delicious
without
cookie.
it being the most reddest red of red that you've ever seen,
Mm.
that is found like nowhere in nature, not even in a rainbow. You can still have electrolytes without that coloring, and that's, I think, the main thing is that it's not that there's no room for treats, it's that there's no room for chemicals that could potentially cause us to be very, very sick
Mm.
when we can make that food and it can taste just as good without it.
100%. And I just want to make some of that very clear. Like yellow 5, 6, and red 40 are the kind of known ones that are linked to certain cancers.
Blue one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like those links are very clear. And I know these like some of these names, like we're gonna have show notes. Because this is all kind of confusing. Like this, it wasn't set up in a way that like the average consumer can just be like, okay, well, what's safe? And I don't want you to go around so afraid. And that's kind of why we wanted to talk about some of the bans too, because there should be a certain level that you feel safe in the food that you're consuming and the food that you're around it, because like this isn't our whole job, right? Like this isn't our whole job that
Damn,
every
I gotta go to
time
work.
I know that every time one of these like major companies comes up with a chemical that is known to be harmful for the human consumption, for us to find out what blue one and yellow for, like, you know what I mean? Like
We're
it's
running science experiments in our backyards. Like
yeah, like,
our boss is calling. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. I have
I'm
to look
on yellow 6 right now. So
deeply into yellow 6 because like I'm trying to like not, die at the age of 40. Yeah, it's and I think that's a really great segue into the next section that we wanted to talk about, because first of all, I want to say that there is hope.
yeah.
You don't have to run science experiments in your backyard. We have a couple of quick tips for you to be able to know, if some of these dyes are in your food, if you want to continue to consume them despite that, is like we just knowledge is everything.
Mm.
But I think probably everybody's key question coming out of this is like, where is the FDA? Like,
Yeah.
why are individual states, having to move forward with their own legislation saying, like, well, you can sell that shit everybody else, but once you get to the New York state line, that known carcinogen cannot be consumed by our citizens? It's like, well, wait a minute. What about the people in Connecticut? Right?
They're just having different Skittles that they don't know, because no one, unless you're really paying attention to this, know the difference, right? Like you're not going to notice the difference between like something that has red 40 in it when you're eating it in Connecticut, and when you go over to New York, it just doesn't have it. You're still having your Skittles, but you just are not consuming something that is, particularly that is poisonous.
So that's why it's like, well, wait a minute. First of all, that's a good thing, because if you don't know the difference, then I guess they can just take it out.
Yeah.
But also, it feels a little bit, I feel a little bit salty about the fact that the agency we have relied on for years to
Made it
protect
their
us
job.
made it their job. It's not my job. I got a job.
It's their name.
But like literally the FDA is responsible for this. And I just want to let people know a little bit, maybe why they're out of touch on this, and why states are taking these kind of things into their own hands. First of all, they have admitted being behind on a lot of their approvals. A lot of their approvals are literally decades old and have no new research. Like, hence why, like, Red 3 was banned 30 years ago in cosmetics, but hasn't been yet banned in food. And they're like, well, we're getting around to that. It's on the docket, but the FDA has come forward with the fact that they have a lack of funding that has left them unable to keep up for the demands with in-depth reviews of these chemicals. They're saying it right out loud. We don't have enough money and we don't have enough manpower to stay current on this. You can feel the way you feel about that, and that's totally fine. But those are important factors to know when you're wondering, like, well, who's looking out for me? The FDA has said, on the heels of California's Skittles ban legislation that went through, those 4 chemicals, they have said, oh, yeah, we're actually going to ban BVO. It's next. And they've also hinted that Red 3 is on that same docket to be banned. And they have also promised to do better. However, what it seems like is when the states move forward on this, it kind of revs the gears. They're not going to be far behind. It is likely BVO and Red 3 will be nationally banned by the FDA for food consumption. And then we'll kind of all be eating our Skittles without Red 3. And that will just be so sad. But one thing that I wanted to mention that New York is doing, and other states may follow, is that they're actually taking legal action to close a loophole that is a known FDA loophole that allows chemicals to be used by companies that have not been previously approved by the FDA. So, in short, you are getting new chemicals in your food that have not been approved by the FDA. And they are coming through a loophole called GRAS, which is an acronym for Generally Recognized as Safe. So it has always been that the FDA needs to approve food additives before they go into mass production for human consumption. But in 1958, an exception was created allowing manufacturers to use, without formal approval, ingredients like vinegar, baking soda, and they categorized these things as generally recognized as safe. You don't have to ask us every time you're going to add vinegar to a formula, because we all know that vinegar is safe. It's natural. We're on that, right? So they created this loophole. They initially had a list of GRAS substances generally recognized as safe. So if it's on this list, you can use it. You don't have to ask us. And if you wanted to get a new one on there, you had to petition. But in 1997, there was so much backlog of petitions for generally recognized as safe loopholes that the FDA just literally threw their hands up and said, well, we can't get to all of these. There's no way. So we're going to put in process a volunteer notification system. Here's what you got to do. You don't have to tell the FDA or anyone that you're adding a new chemical to your food as long as you are saying it's generally recognized as safe. So basically what the FDA system is in GRAS is like an honor system. It's the honor system.
It's the honor system for multi-billion-dollar companies sticking to an honor system.
I've always trusted Pepsi to be an honorable company that would never do anything harmful to me for profit.
Like adding cocaine or
the cocaine?
Coca-Cola. This is a reputable.
Listen, if you can't trust Pepsi, who can you trust? So, but here's the thing. They had so much of a backlog that they said, listen, you independently test it. You categorize it as generally recognized as safe. And then make sure you can back that up if you decide to voluntarily tell us that you're going to add it. And maybe we'll get back to you with like, hey, you got that proof that that's generally recognized as safe, and you can use your own your company that is deciding that this is safe in your studies. So since then, of all the new chemicals that have been added to the US food supply since 2000, 756 of them out of 766 of the new chemicals have come in through the GRAS system, the GRAS notification process. So basically, this is not an exception anymore. It's the rule. If you're going to add a new chemical, a new food additive, you're going to voluntarily notify the FDA that you have independently tested it and that it's safe. Don't worry, it's safe. 756 out of the 766. So every food additive, basically, since 2000 is on the honor system. I don't feel good about that. And New York doesn't feel good about that either. And that's why they're saying that now if the company has got an additive through the GRAS system, that they need to have a warning label on the product. Just saying like, hey, this doesn't have a formal approval by the FDA. And just so you know, you're consuming something that has not been formally said, okay, the FDA has not said that this is safe. And you should know that when you're consuming it.
That it has a new chemical in there that has not been approved by the FDA. What I wanted to highlight a little bit there was just that those are for the voluntary notification. So there are other chemicals being added on the non that they haven't voluntarily disclosed to the FDA to be enacted.
Because you don't have to.
Because you don't have to.
Just like if you want to, if you get around to it. If you're going to add a new coloring into Cheetos, like if you have the time, let the FDA know and just tell them like, don't worry about it. We did lots of testing. It's good. It's good. Tastes good.
They don't have to say.
Fiery hot Cheetos.
Don't even have to say.
They taste good.
If they don't want to.
And we'll tell you or we won't tell you. Just don't worry about it. It tastes good.
We'll tell you if we won't tell you, but if we do tell you, it's just based on our own research, so you don't have to worry about it. It's like none of these things are actually a checks and balances situation. So, our take from this. What are we taking from? Oh, also, I know you have an app that you want.
Oh, okay. So I wanted to, because before we all just slid into like despair and
we're not in despair. We're not going to end this in despair. Just so you guys know,
we're not even going to start it in despair.
No. We want you to know what some of these chemicals are, what generally the discussion is for what we're doing about it, and how we can kind of work this into our, daily consumption.
Absolutely.
Well, not how we can work the chemicals in, how we can work the chemicals into not coming into our daily consumption by mistake.
Right. And not knowing about it, right? So, okay, my app. This has really made me feel, and this might be a false sense of security, but it really has made me feel a lot better about my knowledge. It doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily for everyone because I know that some people can get down a bad road with this, right? If you're a person that gets overloaded with information, I can assure you that if a food doesn't look like the color a food or drink is ever supposed to be, probably don't want it. If you're just a person that gets overwhelmed by it, you don't want apps, you don't want scanning, you don't want this information in your life because it's just over the top. If a food is the color of fire hot Cheetos, it's probably got some dyes in it, and just know that eating it or drinking it, right? Yeah. It's probably has some dyes. That's what you can take from this and just off the simple. But I got this app. So I want to show it to you because it's cool. It's called Yuka. It's free. I hope I'm saying that right.
I just want to touch on the dyes too, because like there are some dyes that are in modern food, and it's not that those are particularly harmful. There are certain ones that are literally extremely harmful and are just banned in other countries. So it's not just like, oh my God, you just have to eat organic and you can't have chips. And that's just not the road we're on. And that's not the expectation. But there are just some that we need to be particularly uh, aware of.
Yeah, because like you said, like you're not going to eliminate everything, but
Yeah.
some are worse than others. So at least having that awareness. Get out. Get out of here. All right. So my app is Yuka. We're having a sick day over here. So
Yeah.
my app is Yuka. It is a scanning app. I will demonstrate with my product. You can scan anything. Hold on. Okay, so you can scan anything from cosmetics to food to anything you want. So all you do is you take the barcode and you put it. Don't shoot me with that Nerf. You take the barcode and you
If you're not
scan
watching on
it.
YouTube, guys, you're really missing out.
And what the app does is it takes the product and it gives it a score out of 100. It also gives it a nice color coding.
Can you just say what you just scanned and what the score is?
Cool. So I took a shampoo that I recently bought. I didn't scan it upon buying it. I scanned it when I got home, and I have made a bad decision. This is Paul Mitchell's Lavender Mint Moisturizing Shampoo. I thought I was making a high-end choice here because, Paul Mitchell, it's like, I want the good stuff, the good.
You're going to blast Paul Mitchell right now?
I'm sorry, Paul Mitchell, but the fact is this definitely got a bad score on Yuka. It what it gives you is, so it got a 0. That's the worst you can get. What it gives you is a list of the chemical additives that have been found to be hazardous in studies that have been done individually on them. And you can click. The first one is methylcoriazine. That one.
One of those that you really just can't say, and it's a tongue twister, and you're like, I should probably just lather myself in.
Let me put this on my scalp and let it absorb. If you click the chemical that comes up, it tells you what it is. It's a preservative used in cosmetics. It was notably used to replace parabens after risks of parabens were highlighted, but it is highly allergenic, severely irritating to your skin, eyes, and respiratory tract. And for this reason, it has been banned from the European Union, Australia, and Canada. So, that's great. That was so, and there was a number of those that rang up in this as hazardous, and it shows you hazardous, moderate risk, low risk. So there is sulfates in this. Anyone who knows, like, obviously, a lot of marketing has gone to sulfate-free conditioner and shampoo because those have been found to be not great. But on Yuka, it ranks them as low risk sulfates. So it's not like it's taking every single ingredient and being like, oh my God, that is the worst thing ever. It's just categorizing them. So one thing I've been really wanting to scan, that I've been wanting to scan for years, is next up, and this is a live reaction to this. I'm going to be really mad if it goes. Where's my chicken nuggets, Rory? Did you take my chicken nuggets? Give them.
He just laughs.
Shh. Organic Applegate chicken nugget strips. I feed these to my son on a regular basis. I have been buying them for years because my son loves chicken nuggets, and I don't know if anybody else can relate to that. They
the parents
are
listening. They're like, you don't say chicken nuggets.
chicken nuggets, you don't say. So, Applegate chicken nuggets, and I went with that brand because back in the day, they were respected for leading the way in kids' food. 82.
Nice.
82 out of 100. Excellent is the rating.
wait a minute. Not to go back to Paul Mitchell, but it was 0 out of 100.
0. 0 out of 100.
But yay for Applegate.
But yay for Applegate. I'm really, so when I click further, because it gives it a score of excellent. So you don't, if that's where you want to stop, you stop right there. But when I click further, it says that it has no additives. It is organic. So that means no synthetic herbicides. And it actually breaks it down macro wise to how many grams of protein, how much sugar, and it gives a negative score for it has a little too much sodium. It has a yellow on the sodium intake. Story of your life, right, Rory? A little too much sodium, a little salty, aren't you? Yeah. Yeah, a little salty. So that is the app. That's how it works. Like I said, you can scan anything. If you think that this is going to exacerbate any health anxiety that you have, please just stay, away or stay towards the basics. Scan a few things that you're worried about, but don't start scanning your children, your husband. It's like,
is this harmful to my health?
Bad. It's like you scan your husband, it's like 0 out of 100. It's like Paul Mitchell. I mean,
why would you scan your kids?
You would never I would never scan you. And if I did, it would come out 100 out of 100. It would be the best ever score. So, if you are interested in that app, it will definitely tell you about Red 40. That is why I got it. When I got that information about hyperactivity, I definitely leaned right into that because I was looking for it just an easy, quick way to look for Red 40 without having to read very long ingredient lists, right?
Yeah.
Quick scan tells you if it has Red 40. Done and done. There's also a paid version where you can search any product. You don't have to have the barcode to scan. So you can just type it in, anything you want, and it'll come back to you with a score. I found it extremely helpful in keeping one particular food additive out. But I think that probably the way I'm going to end up using it is, I don't probably want to slather this.
Yeah.
On my head. I am not neurodivergent, but still no.
I just want to assure some people who might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed by some of this information is that once you get a baseline for some of the things that are you get a score for them, and then we buy a lot of the same stuff all the time. Most people are not even changing their shampoo and conditioner on a couple month basis. You just get the same one over and over. So if you want to start there and you say okay, well, I'm gonna want to scan some of the things that I use on a daily basis or that I consume on a daily basis, get a score for them, and then make adjustments, and then it's just kind of an easier road from there because it's not like you're gonna scan Applegate chicken nuggets every time. They have an excellent score. You're going to be buying them. Still.
What's a really cool thing too that I wanted to mention before? So when something gets a bad score, you can use the app for a recommendation for something that would have a better score. So for example, when I scanned the lavender mint moisturizing shampoo from Paul Mitchell, it said very much no. But also it recommended to me that Native has a far better score in their strengthening conditioner, and that it might be something that I want to consider. Mm-hmm. And I found that so helpful. I also scanned my ready rice because I've been consuming that a lot. I do this I mostly scan things that I'm consuming on a multiple days a week basis. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Something I have once in a while, I don't care. It's fine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But if it's a consistent thing for me, I'll scan it. So I scanned my ready rice because I was I'm having this 3 times a week with vegetables. I want to make sure that this is good. I had the Ben's original.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't do great. It got poor as a score. And that very much made me stop and be ooh, I'm eating that quite a bit.
Yeah.
But it gave me an alternative. It actually gives you several alternatives. And one of them is asparagus risotto from Trader Joe's, which I buy on a regular basis and love. So I was oh, okay. So instead of the Ben's Ready Rice, I'm just going to go for the Trader Joe's asparagus
I like
risotto,
that
which
too.
I
Yeah.
also really like. So it wasn't like I was losing something. It was just like I was being sort of pushed to make a better choice. And I found it extremely helpful.
Yeah, I think that's personally I think that's extremely helpful. I like to scan things. I don't like to sit and read the ingredient list and
Plus, like
try
you
and
said, you don't
remember
even know
and
what half of them
decipher.
are.
Yeah, like what some of these things are. It just becomes incredibly time consuming. So hopefully, guys, this has been helpful for you to gain some information, kind of know what's going on in the world with some of these discussions, and have some helpful tools for you to be able to move forward in the future. With making the best choices for you and your family and what you're kind of not only consuming, but putting on our bodies as far as products go. Because one thing that I had been just recently brought to my attention, I didn't think too much about the things I kind of was putting on my skin or hair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I had to, and I was like, oh, that
This
matters.
is why I'm really happy that they do the cosmetics as well,
Yeah.
because food is one thing and cosmetics is a whole nother thing, but it's still absorbing into your bloodstream in a similar way. So I think it's a lot to think about, but these simplifying methods really can help you to not feel overwhelmed. And like you said, like you scan something once and then and then you just kind of go about your business with your normal routines. And so, yeah, I want this to be helpful. I don't want it to be overwhelming. And I definitely do want, people to know that if you aren't in one of those forward states that are, moving on this legislation, that there are still ways that you can know, and you don't have to just be like, oh my God, the FDA is such a piece of crap. They're not protecting us at all. And what am I supposed to do? I can't, quit my job for this. That there are little things that you can do. So hopefully this has been helpful. We love you guys.